Thanks again. So crazy, as you all know, when you start something, it doesn't always take off right away. So this is, believe it or not, our 1 year anniversary of doing charting opportunities. So the first time we did this, we had Rob Snowden, who is a valuation expert, come to our office and talk about valuations. And we decided that we were going to do that first one online. And so we broadcasted out to the entire universe. I think we had 3 employees and 1 client that tapped into that very first opportunity. So it's nice to see it kind of continue to grow. The goal here with Charting Opportunities is to deliver topics that we believe, based on our conversations with our business owner clients, are important for business owners to hear. We know the struggles that business owners face, and so to the extent we can introduce speakers, topics, ideas that are beneficial to run that business, that's our goal with these. So anyways, with that being said, since we do have a broader internet audience today, I'd like to say welcome to our YouTube live audience. It's great to have you here on board. In commemoration of our 1 year anniversary, back at the back on the table on the bar, we have wonderful Portus Wealth Advisors co-branded with Triple C Brewing glasses. Please feel free to take one, or if you like to drink with 2 beers at the same time and you double fist and you want to take 2, you're more than welcome to do that as well.
Do you have a Sharpie where you can sign it?
We don't have the show. I've got this, but it won't last very long. Yeah. So anyways, and that also goes without saying, we struggled with location for a long time. And Chris here at Triple C has done an awesome job with this building and has been very kind enough to let us use it for payment. But anyways, it's a great event space. So for anybody that's looking to do events, I think it holds 250 people. It's a wonderful event space as well. So you can contact Triple C for those if you're interested. And then just a housekeeping item. So we'll go today, John and I will talk back and forth about ESOPs and private equity from about 4:30 now till 5:15, 5:20. We'll open it up for question and answer. We'll hang out here afterwards, probably till 5:45 or so, and then we'll matriculate next door. So it's a little bit more casual. There's some picnic tables. If you want to come next door, have a drink with us, we'll probably order a pizza, some wings and stuff like that. So if you want to hang out for a little while, and then I'll drop John to the airport. We'll probably leave here around 6:15 or 6:30. So housekeeping, again, thanks for coming and being an active participant. So John's been a friend of ours for over 6 years now. And so as y'all know, the topic for today was John and his business partner ended up selling to an employee stock ownership plan rather than what is popular these days is selling to a strategic buyer or a PE shop. And so I thought that was an interesting conversation to bring here to us today to talk about why did you end up selling to an ESOP. Before we go down the process of why y'all chose ESOP and all of the different things that we've talked about, a 45-second overview of what an ESOP is without getting into the complexity.
Okay. Let me think of the easiest way to say this in 45 seconds. So essentially a company can, typically we deal with LLCs, S Corps, C Corps, etc. But there's also another option, that's an ESOP, among others, right? There's other stuff. In an ESOP environment, what you do is you convert the company into an ESOP, right? And then you sell your shares to that ESOP, and then those shares will vest to the employees over a period of time, based on all kinds of different rules. ERISA sets those rules. I don't want to get too much into the particulars of that. Plenty of YouTube videos on it, an insane amount of literature out there. In essence, though, what enabled us to do, which is one of the reasons that we did it, which we're going to get into in detail, is enabled us to cash out essentially and get good value for the stock and the company that we built, but at the same time be able to maintain our culture. And as far as the structure is concerned, a lot of folks always worry about payout and that kind of thing. How does that work? I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of it, but in essence, you'll see a similar total time frame of payout, similar to what you would see in some strategic deals, and very similar to what you might see in some private equity deals. Typically you're going to be paid out over a 5-year period, give or take. that there's all kinds of levers on these things, so you can structure that in all kinds of different ways. You can shorten it, you can lengthen it, etc. But for us, I think anybody here who's built a team, the hardest thing in the business that I ever did was build the team, right? And so I wanted to make sure that we preserved a culture for that team, and that we also benefited them. Every deal we were presented with, we had a strategic opportunity, we had multiple private equity deals, and we had the ESOP. The primary shareholders would have been fine financially out of those, but like we were looking at the bigger picture, how do we create lasting wealth and really a legacy business for our employees. They're the ones who are sacrificing life and limb to get work out. They're the ones who are staying late, spending time away from their families, etc. So we wanted to reward that, and we ended up going the ESOP route because of that.
So awesome. So they always say begin with the end in mind, right? Unfortunately, I think a lot of business owners probably start off just trying to create income for themselves, and then the business takes off, and next thing you know, you have employee A or employee 1, employee 2, employee 3, and next thing you know, you have a sustainable business. But not every entrepreneur, every business owner thinks about exiting. But eventually it starts to creep into mind. How did y'all know it was time to sell the business?
Yeah, so our business, we founded it, well, to give you guys a little bit of the lay of the land. So I was one of the co-founders of a company called Lending Science DM. We're a database marketing and analytics agency in the financial services space. We help fintechs and insurtechs acquire customers. Basically, we do very advanced level marketing where we interrogate huge databases with billions of records and identify ideal audiences, and then we kind of wrap marketing around that and deliver customers essentially to fintechs and insurtechs. So founded the company in 2006. It was an analytical consulting company. In 2012, we launched the agency side of the business, which was that was the market. You can hear me? I need to speak up? Okay, cool. The agency side of the business was what we built the business on. That really is kind of our modern business model. So, our business, like any business, you look at any stock ticker, it was kind of like this, but we hovered in a certain area of revenue. And I don't want to get into specifics because I have some non-disclosures and other things that I have to abide by, but we hovered in a certain area of revenue that we kind of plateaued at for a little bit. 2019, we launched a new division. It was our insurtech side of the business, and it took off really faster than we ever could have expected. In 2020, our revenue doubled. In 2021, we grew by another 50%. And then it just kept going. It kept going and going and going. And really, I mean, the first time we went to market, the reason we decided to sell was because, holy crap, this thing's worth a lot of money, and it's time to really cash out and take advantage of some of that. I know all of you are probably heavily vested in your business, been there, right? I know what that's like, and there's a lot of weight that comes along with that. So, first time it was because the money. The second and third time, which I'll explain, we kind of ran two parallel paths. It was really about more of, it's kind of interesting. I was asking a business buddy of mine, he's been through, I asked him how many transactions, he's been through 60 transactions in his life. The guy's done really, really well. And he was asked, like, when do you know it's time to sell a business? And it was interesting, his answer was like, bingo. If I'm ever asked that question, that's what I'm gonna say. He said, because I wasn't having fun anymore. Right? Like, I mean, every day's an adventure, right? You're out there, you're in the trenches, you're taking shrapnel, you're dodging boulders, etc. And for me, it was just kind of that time where I was tired, especially after our first process, which we'll get into. The other thing too is, and this is for me personally, I can't speak for everybody. I also knew I was because of that, I was a bit in the way. We talked about like passion and drive and all these things that we have to have as entrepreneurs to really excel and do what we have to do, because it is a job that demands kind of all of you if you really want to do it. You have to really put at least a lot of yourself into it. And if you're not willing to do that, at least for me, I felt like I'm in the way. I need to get somebody who is willing to do that now, and I was burned out on it. So another thing too is, you and I have talked about this. For me, I feel like the skill set to get a business to where we got it from, the next tranche up for that might be 250 million in revenue, might be a goal, or 200. even 100 million in revenue, that's a different skill set to get it from 100 to 250 than it was to get it from, 0 to, where we ended up getting it to. And so, yeah, I also am aware of that. I'm the guy, you put me in a startup environment, I thrive in those environments, right? I can get it scaled, I can build it and get it to a reasonable amount, but you start getting me into a Fortune 500 enterprise, and that's not my jam.
So it became less fun.
Way less.
Way less fun. I took some of those phone calls. So as you came to the conclusion, you hit the revenue target, right? As you talked about in that late 2020, early 2021 time frame. What was the process like of going to market for y'all, right? So you're hiring an M&A firm, you go out. Like, what was that process like for y'all?
Yeah, so
I think y'all did it very strategically, and I think it'd be helpful for everybody to hear how systematically y'all thought through those things.
Yeah, we built to sell. So from the beginning, we structured the company. I was very fortunate too. My business partner, it's really rare to find such it might sound weird, but a perfect relationship. His blind spots were my strengths. My blind spots were his strengths. And I was fortunate too. He had already had a prior exit, and so when we went into this, we kind of structured it. He had that knowledge at the time. I didn't, but we built it to sell, and so and we structured it that way. So when we went out, we were already we had a clean business. We had good books. We had good financials. We made sure we kept those up to date. Didn't get into QAV at that point yet, but we did do when we started to come up with the idea, okay, we need to sell this thing, or anytime we would do transactions, like we might do promissory notes to employees or something to have them buy in, we would do valuations of the business, and we kept those up. So we knew what we were working with, right? And we had a 5-year, if I remember correctly, it might've been a 2-year plan or a 3-year plan. I don't remember because this was in 2019, 2020, but we needed to hit a certain number. And not only did we hit that, we beat it by a considerable amount in that time frame. The company, it was exponential, And so we surpassed that. So when we hit that number, we're like, okay, it's time to sell. So we went and we started investigating M&A firms. And there's a lot of them out there. Do your due diligence there. Take time. Find the right ones. I don't know how many we talked to. It was a bunch of groups. And you're immediately going to be able to, they all talk a good game. They really do. These guys are impressive. Their accounting chops are unreal. Their ability to analyze P&L and that kind of stuff, it really is next level. However, a lot of them are full of it. And so investigate them, find out what kind of transactions they did, find out, have they sold businesses like yours? Have they sold businesses with similar value to yours? Do they understand the dynamics of your business? Do they understand the valuation aspects of your business? Like, what are things worth out there in the market? What other transactions have been happening like yours? If they're selling liquor stores, they got no business selling a tech company or something else, or they might not have any business doing that, or retail chains, or whatever it happens to be. So we, in our space, FT Partners is a popular one. We talked to them. We ended up going with Croft and Bender in Atlanta, Georgia for our first swing at bat. I don't remember how many we talked to. It was a lot, but I can't stress having dealt with multiple ones and talked to a bunch of them and seen some things work, seen some things not work. Get a good firm. Start identifying them now. Even if your plan is selling in 5 years, start making those relationships and, hey, what do we need to do to start preparing the company for that so you can get the maximum yield out of whatever it is you want to do,
Yeah. So you go through the process, you start to identify M&A firms.
Yep.
You interview said M&A firms, you make a decision, you go to market in spring, summer 2021, right? Is that right? Or was it earlier? Spring, it was early spring maybe? What was the go-to-market process like for you all, right?
Yeah, it was complicated. Obviously, they had to do a bunch of cleanup on the books. I shouldn't say a bunch of cleanup. They had to understand what stuff was. They recategorized some things accordingly, some things that they saw that, I guess we were doing incorrectly. But we also had to do things like quality of earnings reports and all that. We weren't spending the money on that until we decided to sell. Once we started that process, we kept those up annually. Did valuations, a bunch of different ways to figure out what the company's worth, transaction analysis, all that kind of thing. We took our time and created a really good, what's called a SIM, or a confidential information memorandum. You guys will do it if you ever go to sell. It's the teaser, basically, package that you're going to be sending out. We identified strategic buyers and private equity firms that would be good, what we thought would be good fits. We had 383 companies that we marketed to and that we contacted. I took some notes here. 166 buyers out of those 383 signed NDAs and took a SIM to review us. I couldn't find the number on IOIs. I'm taking a guess, and IOI is an indication of interest, like, hey, we're interested. This is loose. It's kind of like a soft LOI. This is loosely what we pay for it. I think we had 63, but I'm guessing. Yeah, it was a tremendous interest. And you guys can imagine, as a business owner, you have 63 IOIs. How many do you think you got the business sold at that point? Like, or you're going to sell the business? Am I the only one? Right. We ended up with 7, I think, LOIs at that, letters of intent. And they were good. So we went through, we interviewed all of them, looked at their books. As for when I say books, I'm talking portfolios. If they were a PE firm, if they were a strategic, who are they? Why do we think they would want us? Why would they want us? What other companies like us have they bought and integrated into their fold? And we ended up we narrowed it down to 3 buyers. There was 1 strategic and then 2 PEs. But the PEs that we selected, what we would consider strategic PEs. The typical PE firm wants to come in and buy you, whatever. They're going to heavily leverage you and, expect you to grow and all that. If they weren't in our space, or they haven't bought companies similar to us, and they didn't have a strategic reason to buy us, we weren't really interested. So we narrowed it down to 2 strategic PEs, and 1 strategic buyer and 2 strategic PEs.
Okay.
And then private equity firm. Yep. And we ended up going down the path you have another question?
No. What PEs?
I can't. I don't know if I'm allowed to share that or not.
Again, what PE stands for?
Yeah.
Private equity firms. Yeah. So we ended up going down the path with a strategic, big public company that wanted to buy us. Several meetings, negotiated the price. Literally, like, this is a done deal. All the higher ups in the U.S. corporation. Everybody was super excited, and it fell apart in the 11th hour. Apparently, I don't exactly know how the structure works. It's a public company. They had an Indian parent, and the entity in India went a different direction. And so the U.S. entity wanted us, and it fell apart. So after who knows how much work that we invested into this, money, etc., and you can imagine how that felt.
So, because that takes time,
A lot.
it takes a lot. So that whole LOI process. Remember, they started in 2021. Who remembers what happened at the end of 2021, beginning of 2022? Federal Reserve starts raising interest rates. Everybody gets scared. Money runs and hides. So you're sitting here. You had 3 firms that you're going through the process with. You went down with 1, and then you rushed back out to the other 2, and they both said yes.
Nope.
No.
They both said we would have loved to,
No.
but we already went in a different direction with this, and we went in a different direction with that. So there we were. I remember the last call that I had with one of those firms, I turned my phone off and I screamed out loud like when you guys go through the M&A process, it's a second full-time job. I don't mean that figuratively. It's a second full-time job, and you may put more hours into it than you do your actual job. And so we went through basically a year of that, and
So
no sale, no deal.
It's a happy ending of the year. The story is happy, right? Obviously nothing really went wrong with that process, but through the process, obviously you're back to square one, right? Like you've got to grow the business because 2022 is a mess. So you're back to growing the business. What did you learn about the business? What did you learn that you then took to apply to get ready for the next transaction? Right?
Yeah, so we needed a break from that, and we had to focus on the business temporarily. We needed to be able to stop. Okay, if you haven't been through that process, it's very fast paced and there's a lot going on. You're running a gun and you're trying to maintain revenue, trying to make sure maximizing all your numbers and everything else, and holding on to every little thing you can. But we needed to stop, assess, okay, damage control, what's going on in the business right now? What do we need to do to fix any, plug any holes that may be in the business? And then let's analyze what happened in that process and what can we do to either fix problems, right, that we had, or what tweaks can we make to get more EBITDA multiple or whatever it may be. And so our biggest challenge that we had, it's a common problem in our space, is we get customer concentration. You might see that in software too, or tech, right? You probably see a lot of that. So 40% of our revenue at the time came from a division of the Fortune 500. As an entrepreneur, if a company wants to give you millions and millions and millions of dollars, you're not going to say, I'm not going to do that because it's going to throw my customer concentration above 9% or something in a given category. You're going to take the money, right? And so we did, and we really expanded that relationship, and it was a really strong relationship, and maintained its strength for a long time. But we know we needed to work on customer concentration, and so our business, we operate kind of in we do two things, which is marketing and risk management, but we operate in three industries, and that's traditional personal loans, and that's all kinds of shapes and sizes and colors and shades of personal loans. And then we work in debt consolidation loans. And then we also work we work in mortgage too, but then we also work in insurance. And so when we went to market, our spread was probably like, and these numbers may be slightly off, but somewhere around probably 50% in personal loans, 10% in debt consolidation loans, and 40% in insurtech. When we went back into market, which is coming up, we were basically 33. So we worked on that, and then our revenue in insurance, probably nothing made up more than 20% or so of the total revenue in that, which really helped from a customer concentration standpoint, and it helped from a valuation standpoint, because if you have issues with customer concentration, your potential suitors are going to be looking at that, and that's a risk to them, right? What happens if this customer goes away? And so we're aware of it, and we addressed it to the best of our ability. It's not as perfect. Nothing's ever perfect.
So we were talking about it earlier. One of the other things y'all figured out in that process was different lines of your business had different multiples applied off of it. So the insurtech business, I don't know, theoretically, insurtech is better than personal loans or whatever,
No,
right?
it's more of the services offered in those. Like in our business, when we're doing database marketing, like you have service, you might have a 4 to 6x multiple on EBITDA. But for certain things like IP, custom scores, databases, things you own, things that aren't necessarily service delivery based, those can have massive, adjustments, or you can have a massive multiple on EBITDA. I've seen data companies in our space sell at 16, 20x of EBITDA, which is significant. I've seen them sell for more than that, And so in our categories, we have like risk models, and some of our models, they'll be evaluated a little bit differently, and data will be valued a little bit differently than service type objectives like marketing services and that kind of thing. So we're working hard, and we still are working hard, even post-transaction, to always be maximized, like trying to figure out, okay, we can grow by revenue, we can grow by multiple. And so how can we focus on each sector of the business to maximize its value, where like until then, we're kind of always focused on revenue. And so it's kind of a different mindset, and we're still very dialed into that even post-transaction.
So it was just, obviously, again, talked to John a number of times throughout the process, but in talking and getting ready for this, the research that they did on the M&A firms, and they identified in advance, these are the top M&A firms in our space. These are the ones that we want to be hungry for us. And then also the multiple aspect, the understanding of the work that y'all did to prep it to get ready for sale was very impressive.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
So
it's work worth doing. If you're going to sell, it costs a lot to sell a company. Go ahead and do your valuations. Make sure you know what you got coming into it. Reputable firms they're motivated like you are. If you have an M&A firm, they want to get the maximum valuation too. But after that. I was talking to William last night, after that transaction fell apart, we maintained our QOE. We maintained our valuations every year we were doing them. So we knew what we were working with going into it. We knew Like when we were able to speed up transactions. If if a suitor came along, yep, here's our valuation, here's our books, here's our Q of E, everything. Like, take a look. Let us know if you want to give us an LOI.
Sure.
I had a question, because you had said that when you were working with the M&A firm, they looked at valuations in different ways, and I thought that was fascinating because, so can you share a little bit more about the different ways they looked at the valuation process to get to the final number?
Yeah, well, you'll probably, I don't remember all of them. There's discounted cash flow is one of them. There's all kinds of ways they did it.
Yeah.
So there were 3 different ways they were measuring things, but then when you go and actually do the valuation, you'll meet with the valuation firm and they're going to ask you all kinds of questions based on all sorts of stuff. Like, this revenue, what is it? Where did it come from? What is it? How do you develop it? Is it something you own versus is it something that you're just doing? And they'll value like each revenue tranche, if you will, or each category may have a different value associated with it. And then there's 3 different ways, and I don't remember what they all are, that they would kind of analyze and blend together to come up with a fair market value of what the organization is worth. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
That was super important. It really is, because there's simple little tweaks I've seen. Like in our business, there was a big one that I can't talk about it because NDAs. I'm still there and all that. But like, there's a really easy tweak we could have made to the business. I don't know what its overall impact would be, but it would have had a significant difference in multiple. If we would have started, it would have been easy to implement, but it would have taken about 2 years. And I'm like, oh, a big difference. Yeah.
So, Eric, did you have a question?
Yeah, curious, when you were looking at the M&A firms, how much you valued or weighted the pricing of the deal structure with those M&A firms versus the value you believe they would deliver if you came down your final options?
That's a great question. They all kind of came in around the same.
Yeah.
Loosely. Like there were discrepancies and that kind of thing. We wanted the right people.
Yeah.
We wanted the right people. Like in a large transaction, if you pay somebody X versus Y, if they're 10% off, who cares?
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say 10%. They're 10% off on their fees, not 10% of the total transaction volume. But it's like, it doesn't matter.
But they all structured their proposals pretty similarly.
Very similar. Yeah, they weren't all the same, but they were similar.
So
You get what you pay for, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of, I want, if I'm going into, that was a huge decision for us. So like if I'm going into a medical situation, like a health problem, I want the best surgeon. You know what I mean? I don't care if it costs more money, as long as again, none of them were like radically different.
Right.
So the decision to sell the company to X person was not based on money, or was based in the right
Oh
person?
no, I mean, it's based on money.
Yeah.
like no matter what. And we'll get into why the ESOP versus the others, but without question, like we built it to sell. We weren't going to compromise in any area. Is really what it came down to. So we held a line hard with every potential buyer, with everything, but we weren't gonna. The reason that deal fell apart with the public company, it wasn't because of money. I mean, I guess it was in the grand scheme of things, but they had gone in a different direction strategically. So
2021 falls apart.
Yep.
We can't sell a business in 2022 because, well, we just couldn't sell a business in 2022. You go back out to market,
Yep.
And ultimately that market, going back out to market, leads you down to kind of parallel tracks, right?
Yep.
You've got an ESOP track, and then you're going back out to strategics or to private equity again.
Yep.
Just talk a little bit about how that came through.
Yeah, so we went through a second process, a guy on our board. We talked to Croft and Bender. Again, great firm, can't recommend them enough. They're awesome. Really know their stuff. But some of the challenges we had is there's sunset clauses. There's all sorts of conditions that we had with agreements with them and others. And so we decided, we have so many connections in the strategic space. Maybe, there was always the opportunity, like maybe we could kind of sell it on our own, or like at least identify the prospects and then get somebody to represent us. on their own. There was a little bit of that in the back of our minds. But then we ended up going with an organization that was referred to us from somebody on our board. It was a company called KCA Capital, and they're an M&A firm. But they went out, and we kind of went down the path of like, if you can sell it, we'll pay you. And we had some exclusivity arrangements, but it was sort of we didn't guarantee, that we're going to stay in that process for a given period of time and lock all these things up for a given period of time. Again, we would, we constantly kept our valuations updated. We kept our quality of earnings reports updated. And it was kind of interesting. We had some challenges in our second go around with revenue. We had a big revenue dip that happened from a Medicare regulation change, which that was like perfect timing. It was just, perfect timing. Right as we go to market, there's this, we have a big Q4 because in Medicare there's certain selling seasons. They have the annual election period, which is basically October through December, and then they have another open enrollment period from January through March. And there was this big regulation change that stopped that industry. So it was couldn't have been a worse time, But luckily, in our books, we were able to describe that to people that knew kind of what we were going through. And it surprisingly, just as an encouragement to you guys, if you ever run into something like that, it wasn't that big of a hurdle. I thought it really would be. I thought it was going to really impact us, but because it impacted everybody nationally, we were able to kind of work through it, and all the potential suitors kind of knew.
So you kind of, we talked about it this morning. It's almost like open sourced M&A structure that y'all went through.
Sort of.
And then,
but I don't remember the stipulations we had with KCA. They were awesome too. They were great to work with and very easy and appeasing, if you will.
but at some point, and it goes back prior to, right? So at some point, the idea of, hey, we can sell to employees comes to the table.
Yep.
Right, like talk about, because that goes all the way back to 2020, right? 2019, 2020 possibly?
Before that, I remember somebody told me hey, have you ever thought about selling to an ESOP? And I was like, what? I was like, what's an ESOP? And what? And it kind of blew over my head. I didn't really understand what it was. And so when we started really investigating, our options and weighing different things that were out there, things we could, either, sell into an M&A firm, sell into a PE firm or a strategic, ESOP kept coming up. So we did talk to a bunch of really reputable firms about them, and they explained tax advantages of them. They explained something called a 1042 exchange, which I'll get into later. And there were some really appealing things about it. I have to admit, when I kind of dove into it, I really didn't fully understand it. And so I was making a bad decision because I had incomplete information. And ideally, what I think all of us want is, you sell to a strategic, you get paid all cash, 100% up front, and you're cut the day you sign the document, right? That's kind of what most of us dream about. Even though I don't think in the long run that's actually what most of us want, but that's a whole other subject. We had multiple firms that we had talked to already. During the second process, we had been out there and our SIM was going around from that first process, and in places that SIM needed to be floating around in. And we were fortunate because our transactional value was enough to get on the radar of some of the M&A firms, out there that really wanted to go after kind of the mid-sized market cap companies. And so long story short, Lazier Capital had reached out to us. I don't remember if they'd been kind of courting us. And for those who don't know, Lazier is like the ESOP group. They are the ESOP M&A firm out there. And they're awesome. They're really good. But they had kind of courted us and, hey, we know who you guys are. We know what you're doing. We think we can get you what you're looking for from a private equity firm or from a strategic, or at least similar structure. And we think there'll be some other advantages to it. And so we kind of went down that path a little bit with them, but we weren't willing to fully commit to it because we had already gone down this path and we had a bunch of interest from some strategics and a lot of private equity firms. And so a common problem in the ESOP space is you'll have a lot of companies that really they're not built to sell they're, whatever service-based companies of any type that are really good at what they do, but when they're, as far as how they created or how they built their business, they didn't have all the right infrastructure in place. It was a little sloppy, so they tend to get lower valuations. They always focused on revenue, not margin, which is fine. You know, I'm not knocking any of that. We didn't do that. So we made sure we held lines on all these kind of various, you know, KPIs in our business. And so, you know, we had ended up getting to a certain point, I'll call it 30%, 20% down the process, 25% done with that ESOP process to really get an understanding of what it is. And so it was kind of sitting in the background like, man, that's really good. I see a lot of advantages to this over selling to a private equity firm. And,
including value.
Including value. Yeah, so while we were going through that second process, Lazier conducted something called a feasibility analysis on us, and they looked at all our books, they looked at our financials. We went through, you know, I'll call it like LOI light type stuff, you know, where they're really dialing into the business and figuring out who you are, what you do, and what you're really made of. And when they came, the feasibility analysis basically says, this is what we think we can get you in valuation. And I don't remember what the confidence interval was. It was something like 90% confidence interval kind of thing. This is how much we think we can get a bank to fund. This is what these structures, payment structures to you would look like over the life of the ESOP, or the life of the, you know, here's the 1 year, 3 year, 5 year kind of thing, and ongoing. And you know, we're very confident we can get that. And we're like, man, that's pretty compelling. We can do all that and maintain our culture. You know, we're not going to have this PE overlord looking down on us, or we don't have to worry about 30 or 40% of our staff getting cut by some strategic or some private equity firm that wants to come in and consolidate things and roll us in and, you know, gain efficiencies that way. So still didn't do it yet, but yeah, but that's kind of, that analysis really proved a lot of things out and answered a lot of questions for us, and we were surprised by it.
So you understand the ESOP now, and you're a third of the way down the road with the ESOP, but you're still, there's the private equity money that continues to get dangled in front of you. That's going to win, maybe it won't, maybe it will. So you keep going down that road, just like you did previously. You had a buyer.
We did.
And what happened?
So went down path. We had 3 PE firms. We had a bunch of PE firms interested in us, and you know, but we ended up going down the path. There were 3 that were like legit interested. Hey, we want to buy you. And we ended up going down the path with one in Little Rock, Arkansas. Again, I'm not going to mention their name because I don't know if I can. They were great guys, really well put together. Not your typical PE firm that, and I have nothing against PE, but they were cut above the rest. Like, these guys have been involved in some serious transactions in their career. And anyway, knew a lot of people in our space. They had a lot of people in our space that actually were on the board of the PE firm. We negotiated a price, right? A fair selling price. The structure wasn't quite what we thought it would be. It wasn't bad in any way, shape, or form. These things come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. Yeah, so we came to an agreement on structure.
So structure being cash up front,
cash
payout.
up front, yeah, payout, versus, you know, rollover equity. Any private equity firm is going to come in, they're going to want to buy a portion of the company, a majority of the company, and leave you with rollover stock. And then their goal is to help you grow that company into something much bigger, bolt you on, sell it, and then you're out, you know, and everybody makes money together. And again, I absolutely believe they could have done what they said they were going to do. Like, these guys are rock solid, really smart guys, and good guys. Like, they've done it before. They have a very consistent track record. But I knew no matter what, man, this is going to change the culture of lending science. And our culture is what got us here. I cannot say, like, you know, I got us here, me and Tim, our leadership skills. Yeah, I suck as a manager. You know, I'm really good at certain things. I'm really good at delivering. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, but I'm really good at delivering certain things in our business. You know, I have a sixth sense for certain types of things that are, you know, natural talent, can't be denied. But like, I'm not, you know, Steve Jobs or some innovative business thinker or business mind. You know, our team did it. And so, yeah, in that 11th hour, I'll call it the 10:30 hour. You know, we walked away from the private equity deal and told them no deal. We're gonna go with ESOP. And so easy
To walk away? You got, I mean,
big, big pile of money.
Yeah.
But Yeah, no, not easy to walk away at all. But something I learned in this, William and I were talking about this earlier, is when you're presented with all these options that you can't really lose in, I guess you can lose in some of them. You got to be wise in your decisions. But when you're presented with big options like that, make a decision and go with it. Like, take the information that you have and make the best decision you can, and then roll with it and just stick to it, and see it through. Because I will tell you this, what probably killed that first deal more than anything? Time. Time kills all deals. It really does. So like there just comes a time where you have to be decisive no matter what. The grass is always greener. There's always somebody who'll pay more. There's always somebody, whatever, who'll be a better fit. Man, just make a decision. It's like you have an opportunity here to set yourself up, to set other people up. Do it. Take it. You're only gonna have so many of those in your life,
So I have 2 more questions.
Yep.
You know what I'm gonna end on.
Okay.
But before we go to that, we talked about this over lunch. In hindsight, what do you wish you would have known in 2019 that you learned from 2020 to 2024? First, obviously, you just said it, time kills all deals, right?
Yeah.
Certainly an important component. Anything else that you learned through the process that, obviously you want to share?
I knew customer concentration. I wouldn't say I learned it. It was a problem we had, but it's like, I'm not going to turn the customer down. I wanted those dollars. It's like, it's a huge amount of money. I'm not gonna say, no, don't pay us. We can't do that. It'll screw the balance up of our, of our EBITDA mix for an M&A firm or for a potential private equity deal or whatever. But so I didn't really learn that. I knew it, but I really do wish so 2 things. One is value maximization of our EBITDA. And like small tweaks that we can make in our business. That I can't stress that enough, guys. Having gone through it, analyze your business. Pay to have valuations done, or understand at least like where your revenue's coming from, what's it worth, where it's at, and how do I get it so like I can make simple tweaks to bump that multiple up. It can make a huge difference, like massive, massive difference. And some of the things, like even some of the things now, and I can't talk about the specifics of it, that we want to do in our business, some of them won't really cost anything. It's just changing the way you do things and maybe making some subtle adjustments, and there'll be some cash flow issues with the model changes and other things. But subtle adjustments that we can make, or that we did make in some ways, but could have made pre-sale, would have made a massive difference. And I don't regret anything like that we did, but like I would focus on that. And stay focused on that as you're growing your business. The other thing too with an ESOP, there's something called a 1042 exchange that they're going to use. If you talk to somebody about an ESOP, they're going to talk to you about how you can do a like kind exchange, like in real estate, where you take whatever, XYZ in value, and you can then transfer that value into a stock portfolio, and you won't pay taxes on the sale. That's a lot of money that you're going to save, right? Here's the problem is, let's say you get in your at the day of transaction, you sell 100% of your stock, right? You may only get 30, 40% of the total value, if that, of the cash up front on that first day, right? That means you have 70% that you have to come forward with cash to buy stock and loan yourself in exchange for the stock that you just exchanged. Does that make sense? I didn't have that kind of money sitting around, you know what I mean? And so I opted not to do it anyway because it got really complex, and I'm like, man, my life is so complex. I'm sure everybody else as a business owner is already there. I'm like, why do I need a lawyer and accountants and all these other people to like just review my taxes? I want to be able to like go to H&R Block eventually and just do it, or have William do it on TurboTax.
Yeah. You ruined that a long time ago, John.
Yeah, but so I wanted to keep it simple and opted out. But that was I don't want to say it was misconstrued to me. It wasn't probably either explained as well as it could be, or I'm a crayons and construction paper kind of guy. Maybe I didn't understand it, as well as I should have, or maybe I shouldn't have been multitasking while it was being explained to me, or whatever. But I didn't fully understand that, so I thought there would be some tax advantages that I wasn't able to participate in. But that's okay. I don't regret it.
So the lesson I learned from that when you were talking about it earlier was become an expert in everything that somebody says. because you hear 1,000 different things from M&A people and everybody else through the process.
Yeah.
And you've got to understand what they're saying, or else you're going to miss what they're actually saying, which makes it difficult because you're being asked to be an expert in a billion different things in the process of going through it. So we'll finish with passion. So we oftentimes hear, right, as business owners go to sell their business, oftentimes business owners have spent their entire lives building their business. And most of the times, I think the statistics are 74 to 77% of the time a business owner sells their business, they regret it within a year. And it's because that's kind of sort of become who they are. And you found a way to get past that. And so John founded a nonprofit. So you want to walk us through, you struggled as well, right? Like you sold the business, and I mean, I remember taking multiple phone calls from John. I'm depressed. I don't know what to do. It's not the same business. It's not, right? Like, I mean, I remember those conversations, and you went through that period for 2 to 3 months.
Yeah, so I had a bunch of mentors, and helped me get where we did. And I would always ask him, like, hey man, what am I going to experience when I sell this thing, And I thought I was going to experience financial security. I thought I was going to experience the monkey getting off my back, the weight of leadership. Hey, here's the baton, go run with it, boys. Good luck, And I didn't experience any of that. In fact, it was kind of interesting. We closed, and the check's clear, wire transfer's clear and everything. And I thought I would, for a day, I felt, you guys remember what it was like when you graduated high school? You kind of had like, I just did that, and all the weight of you had like all the promise of the future, right? I felt like that for a day. One day, it was the day we sold, which was weird because at the closing table, I told them about this earlier. I thought it was gonna be like this elaborate process. We all hop on the Zoom call and they're like, all right, we're done. And I was like, wait, what? What do you mean? They're like, yep, all good. Congratulations, good job. All right, see ya. It was like, literally, it was like, that call was maybe 5 minutes long at the most. So anyway, I got through that, and I'm either happy or I'm frustrated. Those are my two personalities. And and I'm a big goal chaser. Like that is a big part of me. That's why I love the startup thing. And I found myself depressed, and it wouldn't go away. So a little bit about my personal life. I'm a Christian, I'm a husband, I'm a father. And I always kind of ranked like my purpose and my identity with like lending science or, all that, the business side of me down here. But I was surprised at how much that impacted purpose in my life. And so I got depressed. It wouldn't go away. Took some time off. Business partner's like, man, we've been burning the candle at both ends for a long time. Go take some time off. I did. I'm an avid fisherman, for those who don't know. Have a commercial captain's license, the whole thing, And anyway, I went to the Keys. I came back from there. I went to the Bahamas. It's not that far from where I live. We run over via boat all the time. And wouldn't go away. And I'm driving down US 1 in Sebastian, Florida, near where I live, and I have it out with God. I'm like, what is going on? Just praying. And I'm telling you, I heard it. He put it in my heart. He said, your healing will come in the healing of others. And I knew what he meant in that. So I'm also a cancer survivor. I didn't talk about that at all. And so I know how important hope is when you're dealing with debilitating circumstances, when you're sitting in a room with people who are going through life-threatening illnesses, and you're seeing some of them win, some of them lose. You're seeing the impact that faith and hope can have on people in those scenarios and then in those situations. And so I knew what he was telling me to do. So that night I went home and I started an organization called Hooks of Hope. And it's really just taken off. So a good friend of mine, Fred Galvin, I don't know how much you guys know about the special operations community in the military, but he stood up MARSOC for the U.S. Marine Corps, which is that's the Marine Special Operations Command. It's their JSOC unit, or it's like a Navy SEAL equivalent, and they're not going to like me saying that, but just to explain it to non-military folk, it's a JSOC unit, it's an elite special forces unit, and amazingly, Fred never lost a guy in combat. through all their combat, and that's all they do. But up to any company that he managed, anybody on his teams that he managed, he never lost anyone. But in a brief period of time, there were 6 Marine Raiders or MARSOC Raiders. There were 6 Raiders that committed suicide. And I told my buddy Brett about hooks, and I started talking to Fred about hooks. And when I started diving into there is a veteran suicide pandemic in this country, where 22 of these guys are committing suicide every single day, 44 if you include drug overdoses and alcohol-related deaths, right? They're 2.5 times greater likelihood. Just being a veteran makes you 2.5 times greater, have a 2.5 times greater likelihood of committing suicide. And a majority of these people who are committing suicide are war fighters. And so, we formed Hooks, and we developed a process to help heal these guys. And it's a lot. We take them fishing. We build out these fishing retreats in South Florida where we rent out a resort. We fly operators in from all over the country who are struggling. And we bring in expert-led educators on things like traumatic brain injuries, on physiology, functional medicine, hormone dysregulation, which a lot of these guys have. Everything tends to get bucketed into PTSD in this space, where a lot of them actually have physiological problems that are causing the emotional issues that they're having. We also bring in experts on post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm not dismissing that. We bring in psychologists and clinical counselors who specialize in this stuff. We also bring in people to talk about biblical identity, spiritual renewal. We bring in people to talk about relationships. A lot of these folks struggle. There's a lot of collateral baggage that they bring in to the military. A lot of them come from, it's very common to see broken homes or military homes where there's performance-based dynamics in the relationship. When these guys latch into the military, that feeds that, right? The more you work, the more love you get. The challenge is when you get out, that doesn't work from a emotional dynamic, that doesn't work in the real world. Same thing if you come from a broken home, you don't have a lot of that agape love and grace. Well, when you get in the military, it feeds that, right? All of a sudden you replace all that agape love with brotherly love. And so you work hard, and the more you work, the more you get. Well, when these guys get out, they're all banged up, beat up, they have traumatic brain injuries, their testosterone has hit the floor. You look at these folks and they're like the epitome of physicality, 6'2", 200, 7% body fat, and they have testosterone like a 75-year-old male, and it's because of all the combat and the stress and everything else they've been through. They get out, and the next thing you know, not only have they lost purpose, right, like I just talked about, right, they've lost their family, right, and the next thing you know, they're going to the VA. It takes them months to get treatment. They get the wrong treatment, and before you know, they're mixing psychoactive agents with alcohol and other things, and then they commit suicide. We actually had a participant call the VA who was suicidal. He had the slack pulled out of a Glock 19 trigger in his mouth. That's how bad he was, and they told him it'd be 2.5 months till they could get him out. So we're committed to. That's the war we fight. And it's been tremendous. We're partnered with Operation Barnabas, which is a much larger 501 in our space. We're part of their outdoor network. They have another organization called Spirit that does something very similar to what we do. And us and Spirit together will run 316 guys through the program this year. So it's been an amazing thing. We've interdicted in a bunch of suicides, helped these guys get back on track. We've had a bunch of guys give their lives to Christ at these events. Pretty amazing. We've baptized guys right there in the Indian River Lagoon, outside. It's been an incredible experience, and I'm diving into that. That is my passion, and it's been real. I promise you though, like I didn't think I had this association. Like I've always believed financial security is a myth. It doesn't matter how much money you have. No matter what, in the end, it won't fulfill you. I promise. I've gone down that path, and I found at the end, the thing that fulfills you is really it's 2 things, and I believe this. It's loving God with all your heart, might, and strength, and loving your neighbor as yourself, right? And loving people, our relationships, that is lasting. That can have an impact that can change the world, and it also is gratifying. Like money can make you happy, and I'm not saying money's bad. I'm not saying any of this stuff is bad. I'm not saying gold chasing is bad. It's good, for sure, but I didn't realize I was kind of I was putting too much priority on that in my life at the time. And because of it, when all of a sudden that goal had been achieved, there was a deficit, there was a hole there that wasn't filled with what it needed to be filled with, and that really is loving people, you know? So I do encourage you, no matter what you do, man, chase your goals, go after those things, climb those mountains, reach all that, because it's a good thing. But at the same time, don't neglect your emotional health, don't neglect your spiritual health, don't trade it for relationships. I know so many guys who are CEOs and they have tons of money and they're on their 5th marriage and all these other things. Their kids hate them. What for? Why would you sell your life? You know, and at the end, I got to the end of that finish line and it was kind of empty. So like, you know, just know that. I'm not trying to distract or dissuade, but don't neglect those other things, because I didn't even realize I was. And if you would have asked me, you would have asked others I know, he's not. He's a good family man and all these things, but man, it really hit me. So purpose, and it's meaningful though. Like most of us, we think we want happiness. What we really want is contentment. Happiness is fleeting. It's an emotion, right? I go buy a Ferrari, rip down, 85 and, yeah, it's fun. I'm happy, like when I'm out there, running on my boat offshore in the Bahamas, I'm ear to ear, but it's actually not satisfying, as weird as it sounds. And like real satisfaction, it's not gonna be in the sale of your business. It won't. I wish it was, it'd be easier. I wish everybody, could do that, because it would be an easy path to it. But the real contentment in life is gonna come in serving others, I think, is what I found.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I'll get off the pulpit, my soapbox here. But.
Hey, obviously, thanks to John. Learned a couple of different things in the, again, I've known John for 6 years. The thing that continues to jump out at me just in our conversation over the last couple months leading into this is how well prepared they were going into each step of selling the business. And the crazy thing is as prepared as you were, the first time it didn't work, right? Yep. And so no fault of their own, so to speak. It just sometimes you can be as prepared as you're going to be, and the chips still don't fall the way you want them to. But understanding, the different revenue metrics that different services were creating, understanding who you wanted to target from an M&A perspective, and how y'all tackle the sale. Just, as we grow businesses, you oftentimes think about, what's next? How do I do this? How to optimize? How do I make it better? And when you go to sell the business, it's quite apparent in talking to you. It's the same thing, right? Like, how do you optimize to sell the business? Yeah. So certainly learned that. Learned that we need a microphone. So we're going to work on that one. So it's written down on the bottom of my piece of paper here. So figure out the microphone. Stop thinking small is the other thing I wrote down from the conversation. But anyways, again, we'll stick around for a few minutes over here for Q&A, and then we'll step next door for anybody that wants to join us at the picnic tables. And then John and I will take off to the airport around 6:15, 6:30. So, and then thanks for the participants online, YouTube, that stuck around for us figuring out our microphone problem. We at least figured out y'all's microphone problem. We'll figure out the microphone problem for the in-person folks next time. So next month, we have M&A person come in and talk about the process. So it's November 12th, is that right? Is that my Wednesday? November 12th, JT Schroeder, M&A shop out of Atlanta, coming in to talk about what they look for, what the process is, probably expand a little bit more on some of the things that you talked about. Yep. In terms of being ready, hiring 2 to 3 years in advance, being part of the process, et cetera, et cetera. So anyways, excited for that. And then we have another client who sold his business actually in February of 2020, who will be here in December, that we'll talk about what the process was like. He actually sold to a strategic buyer, rolled equity in, and had a successful roll-in of his equity. And so we'll dive into that a little bit with Martin as well. And then we'll have Christmas. And then we'll start all over again next year. So thanks again for coming out. Biggest crowd online and in person. So, and John, thanks so much for making it up out of Stewart.
Glad to.